Welcome back everybody, my name is Eltimar and we are going to be continuing our Let's Play of Torment, Tides of Numenera. Where we left off last time, we were still in the bloom, in the Surgeon Swamp to be precise. We have a couple more people to talk to. We have Sheen, we have Boris, and we have a maw that we can probably cut open, but we'll see how that goes. Alright, let's talk to Boris first. He sketches a friendly salute. Hello again, friend. Oh no, this is the Essence guy, right? We already talked to him. Never mind. I think we already talked to Sheen as well. She has essences. Right, we're out of here. Pretty much. Oh wait, there's a thing here. What is this? The cask from which Artaglio fills his flagon is made from staves of dark wood. Synth steel bands hold the barrel staves tight, and you can see the dents in the synth steel where some sort of ornamentation has fallen off. Inside, dark spiced alcohol sloshes. Alright. Oh, I'm guessing we can feed him to the maw. That was one of the quests we could have picked up. But I mean, we don't have much to do at the moment. We need to find Kotia job. Not sure where to do that. We can find a moth that leads to the lost anchorage. You know, let's still chop this maw open because we can do that right now. In the darkened corner of the slump, surrounded by waving tendrils, is a knotted mass of bloom flesh. The flesh looks thick and old, and you can detect a jagged seam running across its surface, with faint light glinting from within. As you approach, all the sounds in the slump seem to fade. The chatter of the locals and the rough laughter of the soldiers recede into the distance, replaced by the hissing, chittering voices of the bloom. You realize suddenly that this is a maw, and the weaving tendrils are its tongues. Somehow you're certain you've confronted this maw before. A moment later, you correct yourself. You haven't confronted this maw before, but the changing god has, and in a different body. The memory glimmers, half-formed at the edge of your consciousness. I'm going to try and recover the changing god's memory of the maw, which we can easily do with our edge in intellect. Oops, shoot. You concentrate upon the memory and it begins to emerge. The changing god stands in front of the Surgeon Slump maw, and you realize now that it is uncommonly old. He wears the body of a tall and powerful man, a glaive. From a leather case at his side, he draws a crystalline object, clasping it tightly in his hand. Its name leaps to your mind, the magmatic amulet. This is the artifact that you seek, and it was once possessed by your sire. You take careful note of the artifact so that you can describe and recognize it, if need be. Suddenly, the whispering voices of the bloom are changed, as if the amulet is a prism through which they can be understood. It's still impossible to translate the chitterings into words, but impressions begin to fill the changing god's mind. Hunger and expectation, and most of all, welcome. Your sire reaches forward a hand, and the maw opens at its touch. Compelled by a bond he has forged in the depths of the bloom, he steps through the portal and is gone. The memory fades. We have a scalpel. As you brandish the scalpel, Matkina lays her hands across yours. Wait, I never heard of someone who hurt the bloom casually. Even a cast-off has reason to fear. Are you sure about this? Yeah, why not? She opens her mouth to reply, then removes her hand. She shrugs. Your show. You drive the scalpel into the maw-knotted flesh, and it yields like quivering blubber. Encouraged, you begin slashing through the flesh and gristle. The bloom emits a hissing, seething roar, and a wave of almost palpable hatred passes over you. The ground shakes, and the maw opens.
Of course.
See what's on the other side. There's gotta be something cool.
I'm making a note.
A scene of horror lies before you. The walls and floors turned against the inhabitants of this chamber, opening toothy orifices to drag them down and devour them. Judging by the half-devoured wagons and other debris, this was a market of some kind, or a trade post. You hear faint whispers all around you, harsh and menacing, growing in number. Their hatred is palpable, as is their rage for the wound you inflicted upon the maw and Surgeon Slump. I'm guessing we have to fight some bloom spawn. We could have done this a different way, I'm sure, but you know what? The bloom seems to be a pretty nasty entity. And now I'm not scared of it anymore. Well, that's one maw almost dead, or one the corpuscular maws. It's out of range. Let's just move up a teensy bit. Oh, this is Tiber. His movement speed is not very good, and we need to give him better items, probably. That thing can move a long way. I thought the thing was stunned. Alright, well. Let's deal some damage. Pretty good. What the hell? It moved me. Well, that's interesting. Okay. Eratis is going to finish this one off. Or is he not? Oh, sorry, Makina needs to finish her turn. She's fine where she is.
You never had a chance.
One gone. I'm going to move him into a flanking
Absolutely.
position. Because why not? Tiber's going to try and finish this guy off. God, Tiber sucks.
Barely making a scratch.
It's because you suck. I want Rin back. Looks like Eratis might need some healing after this.
Yes. Now.
Why can't I attack? You know what? Fine, we'll do this.
Ha! Try this out.
I like how they teleport us around after every attack. It's really neat. This should end the fight, though.
Nothing can stop me now.
Let's go.
At last.
No stuff on the ground, unfortunately. There's a tongue cluster here and
Yes.
some sort of loot.
Now.
2 loots. And a doorway. Some shins.
Why not?
On it.
More shins. Let's talk to the tongue cluster. A wriggling mass of tendrils rises from the ground. They remind you of the tongues that surround a maw, writhing and twisting around each other. They make a wet, unpleasant sounds. Out of the corner of your eye, you catch a subtle change in Makina's movements, a tension that tells you she has encountered something like this before. Her bearing suggests caution but not fear. Let's listen carefully. The hissings and chitterings are all completely unintelligible to you, if indeed they mean anything at all. Let's touch the bloom with our hand. You reach carefully into the cluster of squirming tendrils. When they touch your hand, they pass through it, and a prickly hot cold sensation runs up your arm. You notice that the bloom's voices are much louder when you are touching the tongues, though you can't understand them any better. Makina, what is this? She turns to you at the beginning of a smirk, obviously aware that you caught the change in her bearing when she first saw the tongues, and maybe a little impressed that you noticed. After careful thought, I'd guess that it's a bunch of bloom tongues. She reaches out a hand, holding it near one of the tongues. I've heard rumors, stories from the people who've been here a long time, the crazies and adult heads. Tongues only grow like this in the deepest parts of the bloom. You must have dragged this whole chamber into its depths. Touch him again. Nothing. Nothing. Alright, we're gonna leave the tongues alone.
To action.
There is a way we can leave. That leads to the Ascension. We're not gonna go there yet.
All right.
There's a whole other section we haven't been to just yet.
All right.
That maw is not happy at us. We definitely just cut it open. Without a second thought with our trans-dimensional scalpel. Quite possibly one of the greatest items in the game. In terms of this area. Just hacking open maws like there's no tomorrow. No big deal. Okay, we're going
Yes.
to go to... Actually, maybe we have been everywhere. We haven't gone to the Shrine of Sheila yet. Why haven't we
I'm
been in there?
going.
I don't know. Okay, there's an observant speck, a last cast off. Wait, I'm the last
Yes.
cast off. Why am I up there? Ragman and a bloom cultist. So let's talk to Ragman first. Or
Go.
let's go see what this is. What is this? A slab of pitted stone sits in the center of the shrine, heaped with a motley display of offerings. Judging by the accumulated dust and filth, it's been here for decades or longer. Let's examine it. The objects on the slab are a bizarre mixture of trophies left by visitors to the shrine. Many of the offerings appear to be food of the most ghastly nature: candied eyeballs, amputated fingers, and claws in little cakes and pies, and puddings made from other unidentifiable organs, perhaps all harvested from vanquished foes. You also see broken weapons, severed limbs, and a scattering of silver items, little pots, cutlery, buttons, and other discarded scraps of the metal. People have obviously been leaving their offerings here for some time, and everything is a jumbled mess. Your sharp eyes catch the sight of tiny bloom tendrils that snake along the surface of the slab. Attaching themselves to the offerings, they writhe and undulate as if feeding upon them, yet the offerings bear no physical signs they've been touched. Anything else? Nope.
Fine.
Alright, Bragman, who are you? We got nothing to talk about. That's like your opinion, man.
Coming.
Okay, let's get out of here, bloom cultists. Wait, who's the observant spec? Maybe that's a person. Sometimes names are weird. In a shadowy corner of the shrine lurks an old woman, so tiny and unremarkable she blends into the gloom. She's been watching you since you arrived, following you with bright, intense eyes. You notice that one of her arms is missing at the elbow. Greetings. The whispers told me you were coming, Cast-Off. They often do, when someone they regard as interesting finds their way into the bloom. Her voice is soft and shifting, as if everything she says is echoed by the chittering voices of the bloom. Suddenly, she is at your side, one small hand touching your arm. Her eyes probe yours. Did you come here with purpose? Do you know what this place is? You realize that the shrine does feel familiar, as if you, or perhaps the changing god, have been here before. Let's try and remember. We have great ability to do that. You scan the room, searching for anything that might seem familiar. A metallic gleam catches your eye from the nearby slab of stone. It lies partly buried beneath a motley pile of offerings, but the unusual shape of the metal strikes memory. The old woman follows your gaze. He left as an offering, your old sire did, when he was here. You can almost feel the weight of the device in your hand. With a sudden jarring clarity, you see the chamber as it was 40 years past when the changing god stood before a group of robed bloom cultists, offering the device in trade for information. And in the corner, an elderly woman, bird-like with shining eyes. This woman you just met, or someone very much like her, was at the shrine then too. He pored over every scroll, she whispers, wanting to learn how Chilla forged a friendship with the bloom, a bond that imposed no price upon her, or so he thought. And now here you are. Oops, shoot, I did something. Hit a button. In the shrine of Chilla the Great, Chilla Silverskin, Chilla the Bride of the Hammer, and I am her observant spec. What can you tell me about Chilla? Stories, she mutters, passed from one spec to the next. So many stories, told by so many tongues, too many to hold in my head, but the bloom remembers, and it whispers in my ear to remind me. Tell me what she did to warrant such respect. The spectre closes her eyes and cocks her head like a bird's, as if listening to the voices of the bloom. As she begins to speak, the faint chitters and whispers that always underlie her words grow louder, twisting them around in your head, and spawning images in your mind's eye. In the dark, in the bleeding guts of the bloom, a score of young women crouch in a cell carved from living flesh of the bloom. You can barely see the girls in your mind's eye, thin and tired, huddled against the fleshy walls, bound in chains. Who they were before, it doesn't matter. They are slaves now, doomed to labor in the dark. One day, someone new is brought to their cell and chained beside a small girl who calls herself the Spec. The old woman smiles. The new slave says her name is Chilla. Even in chains, she meets the guard's eyes and they look away. Already the bloom whispers in her ears. Chilla places her hands upon his flesh and strikes a bargain. Can I keep listening? You owe us, Chilla whispers to the bloom, for the slaves you've eaten, for the Spec's arm you have devoured. You owe us something in return. The flesh trembles beneath her hand and opens. Beyond is a chamber full of weapons. You catch a glimpse of Chilla's passing blades and stranger armaments to the girls in her cell. Chilla picks a glowing hammer for herself, or maybe the bloom does. It fits her hand like it was made for her, and it never leaves her side again. Then we gather together and make our plan to escape. When all of us are ready, Chilla starts hammering on the door to our cell. The guards come running and we fall upon them, cutting them down, tearing them apart. Then Chilla leads us from our prison and we pour into the market, gathering more and more slaves to her banner. We kill every master we can find. In the market, we decide to make our stand. Chilla knows that her enemy is the boss of Sagis, the woman who killed her parents and turned her brother against her, can't ignore us. We form up in ragged lines, then we hear them. The roar of the soldiers, the tread of heavy boots getting closer, closer. Somehow you can hear them too, along with the terrified murmurs of the slave as they grip their weapons and prepare for the fight of their lives. Keep listening. Noise, confusion. The Spec's eyes are still closed, but she staggers back, raising a hand to defend herself against an invisible attack, as if she thinks she's in the midst of a battle. You can faintly hear the screams and cries, the clink of steel on steel. I stay by Chilla's side when battle is joined. I try to guard her back, but she's struck first by an arrow, then by a blade. Whenever they cut her flesh, silver scales grow over the wound, and she keeps on fighting. Chilla knows why. When she touched the artifact, her birthright, it became the part of her, changed her, so that she cannot be killed. She smiles, raises her hammer, crushes the skull of every soldier who stands against her. A shadow passes overhead. It's her traitorous brother, Shade, soaring on wings of flesh and steel, come to kill her at last. He strikes her once, twice, and again. The spark's voice goes quiet. Each time, silver scales grow to cover the wound. Instead of getting weaker, Chilla grows stronger. She grabs him by the foot and smashes him into the ground, but instead of killing him, she speaks to him. It's a whisper, and I can't hear what she says, but the Shade begins to weep. When she lets him go, he stays on the ground. The battle is won, and the enemy soldiers are running. Chilla goes to face the woman who killed her parents. I leave you with your life, she tells her, but not your name. Get out of here and never come back. You can almost see the broken woman, a feared warlord only hours before, fleeing alone and in shame from the battle. The Spec pauses and opens her eyes. That's where the story ends. Our enemy fled and the bloom was ours. Satch's Cliffs was ours. Chilla became the first Memovira. We ended the trade in slaves, and Chilla ruled Sagis and the lands around for half a century, until the bloom called her to its heart. You keep saying we as if you were there. She blinks. I see the memories of as if I were there, as if I were her, the first Spec. But I couldn't have been there. It was too long ago. What happened to Chilla's enemy, the boss of Sagis? She was forgotten. Some of the slaves said they followed her, thinking to kill her despite Chilla's promise of safe passage. But before they had a chance, she vanished. She escaped to another world, or was perhaps eaten by the bloom. A mischievous smile plays at the old woman's lips. I prefer to think the latter. Chilla ended the trade in slaves, but now it's returned. In a different form, yes. The old slave-holding families bided their time for generations, marrying themselves into the new leading families of freed slaves. They found ways to justify slavery as a punishment for the wicked. So it is with the wealthy and powerful. They're more like bloom flesh than they care to admit, stubborn, enduring, and difficult to kill. The bloom called Chilla to its heart. What does that mean? Its whispers called her, and she disappeared into the depths. Maybe it took her to another world, or maybe she still lives down there. One day she'll return for her Spec. I'm sure of that. Where'd she come from? Once again, the Spec cocks her head and closes her eyes. When she speaks, the chitters and whispers of the bloom spark images in your mind, and you can almost see the events she describes. Look up, high on the cliffs. A sturdy little house, the cliff of Sagis flash before your eyes, crowded with old ramshackle homes. They cling to the rocks like spindly crabs, high above the sea. One of them catches your eye, a pretty little house, freshly painted, blue and green, in a solid nook of stone. A man and woman dwell inside, a father and a mother, 2 children they have, a girl and a boy. Now you can see the people too. The girl is tall for her age, robust and strong. Her brother is small, cautious and quick. One day, the father pulls a treasure from the sea. You can see the man in a fishing boat hauling a silvery cylinder out of his net, looking at it in wonder. He brings it home to his family. What shall I do with this artifact, he wonders, for I am a simple man, not a wizard or sage. The man glances out the window of his house and sees his 2 children playing in the streets. Artifacts bring trouble, he says to himself, and I have a family to protect. I'll bring the treasure to the boss of the town, and she will thank me for it. So the next day, the man gathers the treasure in a sack and sets out for the manor on top of the cliffs. His daughter, Chilla, wants to go with him, but he shakes his head and goes alone. Many weeks pass. The man never returns from the manor on the hill. Chilla asks everyone she knows, but no one has seen her father. One day, just as she and her brother leave their house in the morning, they hear a crash from behind them. In your mind's eye, you can see the pretty little house pulling away from the cliff, its wooden supports snapping like twigs, bursting apart as it falls towards the sea. It strikes you strange as this house, seemingly kept much better than its neighbors, should collapse so suddenly. The children race back along the road, only to find that their house is gone and their mother lies dead among the rocks. As their brother curls up in the street and weeps, Chilla stands beside him, gazing towards the manor at the top of the cliffs. I know you did this, she whispers, and I know what you did to my father. The treasure you took from him is my birthright, and I will have it back. That's what drove her? Vengeance? Not vengeance, a desire to be extraordinary. The Spec's voice is quiet again. The whispers receded, and you sense that these words are truly her own. Chilla believed that her parents were easy victims because no one knew who they were. If they had been prominent and well known, the boss of Sagis wouldn't have dared harm them, but they were small and simple folk, so no one cared when they died. How'd she find her way into the bloom? Look up, Up, two orphans climb the cliffs towards the manor high above. In your mind's eye, you see a brother and sister in their late teens as they scale the sheer cliffs of Sagus. Above them, carved from the natural rock, looms a great walled house. It belongs to a woman, the boss of Sagus and mistress of the Bloom, she who killed their parents and took their birthright for herself. The girl is Chilla, the tall, broad-shouldered and flamboyantly dressed, like a glittering gem against the dull stone of the cliffs. The boy is her brother, Shade, slender and quick, cowled and black. Through the unguarded window they climb, slipping into the garden beyond. There, at its heart, is the artifact, their birthright. In your mind's eye, Chilla and Shade crouch on a ledge, and you can see the artifact as they must have, a metallic cylinder fitted into a strange device. She leans forward, so eager to see what is rightfully hers, but the ground turns slick and she falls, toppling into the garden, close enough to the artifact that she can almost reach, but she's snared in a net of rainbow light. You can see Chilla crumpled again under the strange net, trapped, calling for her brother. Shade watches from the shadows. He makes no move to help. Betrayed, hisses the speck, led into a trap by her twin. But if she couldn't have the artifact, at least she could touch. The speck's voice strange, and as it does so, you can feel Chilla straining, reaching her hand through the net. As her finger brushes the artifact, it flares with brilliant light, and it's gone. But not gone, not really. It's part of Chilla now, changing her slowly from within. She can sense the change, but she doesn't know what it means, not yet. Not as they lead her away. You catch a glimpse of Chilla being led in chains from the great house. She's cast into the Bloom as a slave, and there, the speck smiles, softly and warmly. She meets me. But it wasn't really you, right? No. Okay. I have some other questions. I met a man outside. He claims to be the former Memovira. So he was, a man who enjoyed holding lives at his mercy, pronouncing judgment from his throne. You hear the chittering, whispering voices of the Bloom behind the speck's words, twisting their way into your mind. When you blink your eyes, the image of an imperious-looking man flashes before you. The same man you met outside, but younger, stronger, with a cruel curl to his lip. The whole Bloom was his palace, the seed of a kingdom he would build, for such was his ambition, and the Bloom loved him for it. Such power it gave him. What sort of power? Every Memovira can open a maw at a touch, but not all can summon maws to their side. Fewer still can call them outside the fleshy walls of the Bloom as he could. But the Bloom turned on him, just as it's turning on the Memovira now. Just as it always does. So many lives cut short by his hand. So much fear bound up with his name. He'd grown fat with the terror and strife he sowed. In the mind of the Bloom, he was a beast made plump for the slaughter. Sounds like justice to me. To you it might. To the Bloom it's hunger, nothing more. The speck slowly spins herself in a circle. It's all a cycle, round and round. Feast on one Memovira, raise another in his place. Let the hunger build, she stops, and feast again. So now the Bloom wants to eat this Memovira. That's why she's hiding in her tower. Too scared to leave her tower, too proud and stubborn to abandon the Bloom. She's no different from the ones who preceded her. The Bloom will eat her, and her name will be forgotten. If Chilla was the first Memovira, wouldn't she have been part of the Bloom's feeding cycle too? The speck turns to you sharply, her eyes glittering. What are you saying? She's proof... Nope. If the others were eaten, then she was too. No. She was taken into its heart as a friend. Her legacy lives in her chronicles. In this statue, in my words, the Bloom wouldn't let her be forgotten, and that's proof that she's not like the others. The Bloom is absorbing the statue. When it's gone, Chilla will be forgotten. Are you trying to break my faith, Cast-Off? Her mouth quirks into half a smile. You won't succeed. All you have is words. Bring me evidence that Chilla is gone, and I might believe you, but you won't find any. How long has this been going on? Since the time of Chilla, so at least 4 centuries? 5? She seems momentarily confused. Before that, who knows? There was no speck to watch and remember. Got some other questions for you. I know a young man who needs work. Is there a place for him here? The old woman glances around, eyes falling on the piles of smelly rags. She bends down, runs a finger along the floor, and finds it covered in grime. A caretaker, perhaps. A strong pair of arms to wield a broom and scrub our rags. I can't promise what I don't have, and by that I mean coin, but he'll have food and a place to sleep. I'll ask the Bloom not to eat him. Okay. When the changing god was here, what did he want from the Bloom? To create a portal to another world, a place called the Ascension. He believed that the crystals of that world would save him from death, so he descended to that Bloom's heart and forged a bond of sorts. From that bond a new maw was born. It took your sire to the world he sought. She purses her lips. But for every bond, the Bloom always exacts a price. If it cannot feast upon your sire, then it would find a way to devour one of his offspring. More than one, perhaps. Okay, let's go tell that guy we got him a job. That's at least something.
All right.
Right, we have to go open that new maw as well. Let's do the job one first, though. At least we can get that quest out of the way.
Don't mind if I do.
That is a pretty huge statue, but it is slowly being absorbed. Eventually, it will be gone as well. Also, really cool eyes, glowing. Pretty cool.
Let's go.
I can't code open that closed maw. It's no longer in existence. But we will try to open the other one legit. Although we can cut it open too, probably, if we really want to. I'm pretty sure that the
Tiber, my well of good stories is running dry.
Bloom will not be
Do
happy.
you have any to share?
Once upon a time, conflict, struggle, more conflict, a daring duel, cliffhanger.
Koti looks up at you without a word, his eyes as dead as before. I got you a job at the shrine at Chilla. You can start
Making a
immediately.
note.
Oh, the shrine? Really? Oh. Well, thank you. He walks away, a little uncertain, but lighter on his feet than when you met him. Well, there we go. We got him a job. Great success.
Yes.
What other quests do we have? We need to help Tiber find Aving. We need to bring the helmet to its owner's people. We need to enter the infested fathom. We haven't done that yet. We need to find a maw that leads to the lost anchorage. Haven't done that either. And we have to go do the Eridus quest. We have to enter the Ascension and claim the magmatic analyte, but we'll do that later.
One moment.
Let's go see if we can figure out how to open that one maw. That's our next goal. Hopefully by talking to it. We do have some of that water stuff that might make the thing be able to talk to us, so we'll see. Which way is it? It is in the... this place. This way down here.
Coming.
I'm hoping that that will be the one that leads the people to their anchorage place. It would be nice to get that quest out of the way as well. Is this the right one? I guess it was the right one. Yes, yes it is.
Done.
Alright, we had some of that water stuff. Somewhere in here. Don't we? Nope. I know we had a bottle of that stuff somewhere. There it is. Flask of bloom water.
You won't notice I'm gone.
Okay, let's quick save here and we'll go talk to the maw. A reddened mass of flesh protrudes from the bloom wall, surrounded by waving tendrils. The flesh is thick and strong, glistening like a newborn beast. A jagged seam runs along its surface, with faint light spilling from within. This is clearly another maw, though its rough, wet flesh suggests that it formed within the past few hours or days. The whispering voices of the bloom chitter in your ears, and all other sounds fade into the distance. Let's listen carefully. The hissings and chitterings of the bloom are no different than usual as far as you can tell. Your sharp senses provide no particular advantage in hearing the odd sounds. You realize that the bloom's voices are a psychic phenomenon, not a physical one. They are literally voices in your head. Let's observe the tongues. They're not interested in us. Let's offer ourselves. You step closer to the waving tendrils. Though you're well within the reach of the maw itself, the bloom tongues don't even twitch in your direction. They're obviously not interested in you at all. Okay, let's chug some of this water. Let's listen again. Your thoughts are still addled from drinking the water of the bloom, but its hissings and chitterings somehow make more sense to you now. You can't grasp the meaning of the sounds, but you get a clear impression of desperate hunger for not a living thing, but a feeling. Sadness? No, that isn't it. Regret?
Making a
Closer,
note.
but no. Guilt. This maw feeds upon guilt. And not just any guilt will suffice. You sense that it must be powerful and deeply held, or it will not be enough to satiate the maw. Okay, so we have the answer to that quest. The newborn maw feeds on guilt. If you want to know if Herja feels any remorse for her crime, let her face the maw.
Making a note.
Yes, the voice murmurs. This is a perfect trial for our prisoner. She can stand before the maw, and unless she has completely divorced herself from human feeling, the bloom will take its due, a fitting punishment. Once she has done this, she is free to go. You will find a disc on her forehead. Turn it 3 times, widdershins, to release her from her prison. Tell her that if she survives the maw, she has earned her freedom. Alright, let me do this thing then.
I'm there. in
I
the
will.
shadows.
Open this maw. With Herja. Let's feed her guilt to the maw. Garkoto has agreed to release you, but only if you face the maw and allow it to draw out your guilt. Huh, I have nothing to confess or regret, so the maw will find me a paltry meal. Accept your bargain. The disc on her forehead pulses briefly and loses its cohesion to her flesh. It falls to the ground and Herja's eyes widen as her imaginary prison disappears. She bends over to pick up the disc, and she passes it to you with a mocking smile. As a knight, I live by my honor, and it's my honor to put some miles between this place and me. A quick jaunt to this maw, and then I'll show my heels. I have a feeling that this maw is going to just rend her, because she is guilty. With a sneer, Herja steps towards the maw. I will tell you what I regret, she declares. Let the bloom do its worst. Confidence shines from her face, and her proud carriage, even despite the filth that smears her armor, makes her look every inch the knight she claims to be. The maw's tongues reach out to her, grasping and tugging as they penetrate into her flesh and draw her close. You can see the first flickers of doubt and fear. Her eyes focus somewhere far away, and she addresses something who isn't there. She begins to speak through gritted teeth as if resisting the pull of the maw on her memories. The spotted dosi, I care little for it, sister, but your sadness made me cry. She breathes deeply, and something inside her seems to break. Her stoic mask begins to crumble. I didn't mean for them to die, not like that, not painfully, not twitching, frothing, kicking, not the children. She swallows. I sold some of the metal before I crumbled it into the air. I thought the dose was still toxic. Tears began to stream down her cheeks. Toxic it was, but not enough to drop them. The screams, that was the first time they ever seemed human to me. But skinning the yellow woman, her tentacles, her sting, she cried and wailed, but she was a monster. Herja sobs and her voice drops to a monotone. Cutting out her babies was a blessing to her, stopping more monsters from entering the world. We all agreed. Keep talking. She doesn't seem to hear, her voice reciting a litany of further crimes. When we brought the tunnel down on the diggers, I could hear their cries through the rubble. Rather than offer mercy, I gave them fire to steal away their breath. Her voice drones on, and somehow this makes her story more horrifying. I herded the weeping families into the spire, even though I knew that the resonances of the chamber would slowly shiver them apart. I hated them, I thought, but it was only because I feared my fellows' scorn. I called down the threshers, and I stood guard with my blazing spear to keep the fathers from saving their children. I laughed at their cries, and I disemboweled the one, because I thought he might serve as a lesson. His blood ran with that of his children, and they all suffered to see the others in agony. We wagered over who would die first. She stops talking. I am a greater monster than ever they were. A piece of shattered synth lies on the ground nearby. Herja snatches it with her free hand and brings it to her neck. Tears pour down her cheeks and she murmurs, I'm so sorry. I'm going to grab her hand. Who's got good strength? Herodis does, doesn't he? No, it's speed. It's a speed thing. That's what it is. You grab her wrist before she can slash her throat, and her pain-filled eyes focus on you. Let me die, she whispers, and leans into the synth. You can barely keep it from her. She is strong, and she clearly wants to end her agony. You want to atone for what you did? Suicide is the easy way, the coward's way. That's right. She drops the synth and begins to sob. Great racking heaves. The bloom's tongues withdraw from her, leaving her sitting on the ground with her new self-knowledge and her grief. Her eyes are distant, almost vacant, and she stands on weakened legs. She totters a short distance and looks back over her shoulder at you. I am so sorry, she whispers, then stumbles away.
Making a note.
Air stirs around you, slowly at first, and then the gust as the maw begins to open, expelling the atmosphere from an alien world into Little Nilish. A black tunnel opens, and the sky in between worlds stretches taut, and then snapping like a call from an infant's face. So we can go into a new area. This leads to the Lost Anchorage. Oh, cool.
Course.
But we are way over time, like 5 minutes over time, so we're going to end the video here. Like always, if you have any suggestions or comments, please leave them below. Others, I'll see you guys next time. Take care.